Salvatore Especial walked down the street on a quiet night in 1904. Especial was contemplating his life and his recent path as he walked. He'd made profitable arrangements with both the Morello mob and various law enforcement agencies as an informant. He merely thought of these arrangements as looking out for his best interests at the time. And though long-term thinking was a trifle beyond him, he had the nagging feeling that there was a corner that he just couldn't see around. He'd always been careful never to give Detective Petrosino too much when they met. Always just enough to keep the heat off. He was careful how he moved as well. At least he thought he was. But as Especiale rounded into the alley near his home, he ran headfirst into Tommaso the Ox Petto. With practiced efficiency, Petto put the man down with 2 shots to the head. Afterward, he met with his boss and reported that the deed had been done. In the years since Madonia's murder, Morello had become more treacherous and unforgiving. He acted as an autocrat who suppressed all dissent and sought advice from his closest lieutenants less and less. Only Lupo the Wolf of all his numerous associates did not shake in fear of him. The remaining members of the family acted as much in fear as they did from loyalty. Things outside the family were changing as well. NYPD dropped surveillance of the Morellos, leaving the local precinct to handle policing the gang. In an effort to be seen as effective, the local cops engaged in a policy of harassment when it came to the Morello mob. Rather than slowing the gang's progress, this policy had the opposite effect. This overt harassment caused the Morellos to tighten up operations, making them one of the most organized criminal groups in the city. Other powerful Black Hand gangs, such as the one led by Gio Gallucci, began gaining power in Little Italy as well. Gallucci controlled large numbers and prostitution rackets there, and as he grew wealthier, he began to cultivate political strength among the immigrant Italian community. Gallucci purchased the 6-story tenement at 38 East 109th Street for $30,000. The first floor was used as a bakery with a small cafe at the rear and ovens situated in the basement. His family lived on the 2nd floor above the shop. While powerful crews like his were too strong to eliminate, smaller independent operators were put out of business by Lupo and his men. If they liked you, they met with you and informed you that you now worked for them. If they didn't, you'd likely take 2 to the head from Tommaso the Ox. Or, if they wanted to make a statement, they'd plant a bomb on your front porch. The number of bombings in New York City increased 2-fold between 1904 and 1905. With McCluskey's squad having dropped the investigation and the local precinct doing little to impede the progress of the Black Hand in New York, the Morello family began to position itself as the preeminent organized crime syndicate on the East Coast. Looking to start pushing counterfeit bills again in Pennsylvania, Morello called his top enforcer, Tommaso Petto, into a meeting. Giuseppe Morello feared no man, but being alone in close quarters with the Ox still made him a little nervous, so he got right to the point. I need you to go to Pittston, set up our operation there and in Wilkes-Barre. It is time for expansion, Tommaso, and strong men like you are needed for this endeavor. Grazie, Don Morello. You have shown me great respect, Petto said clumsily. The two embraced and the meeting was over. Petto, his wife, and 2 young children relocated to Browntown, just south of Pittston, in the summer of 1905. There, under the name of Luciano Perino, he quickly established himself as leader of a crew rumored to be the Black Hand. As fronts for his underworld activities, he opened a grocery and a butcher shop along South Main Street in the downtown area, a short distance from the Susquehanna River. Morello family counterfeit bills of every denomination soon hit the state of Pennsylvania like a monsoon. Not everyone was ready to get in line for the new capo. A local racketeer named Frank Culoro started making noise about the new crew in town. 2 days after threatening Petto and his men, he was found dead with 3 gunshot wounds to the head and body. With things getting out of control back home, a New Jersey-born police commissioner named William McAdoo decided a squad of men who spoke the language and knew the people was needed to take on the Black Hand. He also decided the first man he needed to talk to was Joe Petrosino. Petrosino was the obvious choice to lead this new Italian squad, and so McAdoo decided to catch him down at his favorite watering hole in East Harlem. Walking in, McAdoo couldn't help but feel the stares and hear the whispers from the locals as he approached. Walking up to Petrosino's table, McAdoo introduced himself and sat down. Just as McAdoo began to speak, Petrosino interrupted him. "Yes, I'll do it," he said with a wry grin on his face. McAdoo, surprised into a smile, replied, "How did you know what I was going to ask?" "Knowing how to find information is what makes me good at my job, Mr. McAdoo," Petrosino replied, still smiling. Hearing this, McAdoo suppressed a smile himself, knowing he had chosen the right man. However, McAdoo also knew he needed more than just Joe to be effective. Petrosino needed the support of men he didn't have to supervise or teach the ins and outs of the culture. So McAdoo thoroughly searched the NYPD for other people who could not only understand the Sicilian dialect, but its customs and traditions as well. Unfortunately, there were very few Italian policemen in New York at that time, but the persistent McAdoo would eventually find his guys. The squad was made up of 8 officers, including Petrosino. One of the men, Petrosino's deputy, Maurice Bonsoil, was half Irish and half French. However, Bonsoil had grown up in the Sicilian quarter of the city and spoke the dialect better than he did English. Other men, such as Hugh Cassidy, getting added to the ranks of the squad, dumbfounded newspaper reporters until it was discovered that the man had been born Ugo Cassidy and had changed his name as a young man. The new Italian squad and Petrosino's appointment to lead it were both well received by the honest Italian immigrant community. Many were victims of crimes themselves. Because Petrosino and his squad were seen as Italian first and police officers second, they were able to obtain a modicum of trust within the local community. Petrosino's squad scored an early victory when they arrested and deported a high-level Neapolitan criminal named Enrico Alfaro back to Italy. Alfaro's deportation resulted in an 11-month trial and 30 convictions in the fiercest blow struck against the Camorra and Naples up to that time. The arrest and deportation of Alfaro gained Petrosino and his squad much notoriety, as Alfaro was widely feared in Brooklyn and Manhattan by the local populace. In a news story, one local reporter described Petrosino as short in stature but stoutly built. He is clean-shaven and shows a strong but determined jaw. The mouth is firm, the lips are set in a straight line, suggesting purpose rather than severity. The eyes are not the searching eyes of an inquisitive prodder, but the intelligent eyes of a student. There is generally a kindly light in them, a light that makes one feel easy in the mind. They invite you to be confidential, and when the straight line of the lips breaks into a smile, you can readily imagine that you are talking to some gentle and thoughtful person who has your interests at heart. Petrosino is suave, but this is never discovered until too late, and the Italian criminal who's been chatting with him over a wicker-jacketed Chianti bottle finds a strong hand clasping his wrist, and the information is given to him that he is under arrest. However, notoriety and winning cases in Italy was not Petrosino's goal. Above all, he wanted to see the power of the Black Hand broken, not only in Manhattan, but the rest of the city. It was a cool evening in late summer when forgotten Morello Lieutenant Giuseppe DiPrimo was paroled from Sing Sing prison. There was no welcome home party for him. No money to help him get started, not even a ride home. The word on the street was that Tommaso the Ox had killed his brother-in-law. He decided then and there he was going to have his revenge, whatever the cost. On the evening of Saturday, October 21st, 1905, Petto was working at his butcher shop until late in the evening. Tommaso just happened to be lecturing a borrower about late payments as both men cleared the exit. $2 every week until the money's repaid, Tommaso grunted. If I have to come looking for you, I won't want the money anymore, he threatened as the bespectacled man scurried away in fear. After putting a good scare into the man, which the cruel Petto privately thought of as good fun, he began the long walk across town to his home on Lincoln Street. Then, just a few paces from his front door, Petto heard a twig snap and pulled out the .38 caliber revolver he always carried on his waist. For Tommaso Petto, it would be too little, too late. At that moment, he was struck in the right side by a blast of small caliber shot fired at close range. The pellets embedded into his right arm, right side, and right hip. The bullets kept on coming. A large chunk of lead then tore into the right side of his chest and proceeded downward, severing his spine and leaving a gaping exit wound. A second slug smashed into Petto's handgun and in the process destroyed the hand. A third cracked his right elbow and smashed the bones almost to dust. As the light faded from Tommaso Petto's eyes, the last thing he saw was Giuseppe De Primo standing over him. "This is for my gumbada, Benedetto," he rasped before firing the final slug into his brain. And with that, Tommaso the Ox Petto was no more. Morello was shocked to lose a competent enforcer like Petto, but he was not put out of countenance. On the home front, things were looking better and better every day. Morello now had his crew hijacking wagons and stealing shipments. Everything, of course, was resold at a discount. Even the sale of stolen horses was lucrative. It truly was a happy and profitable time for the family. Older, larger, yet less organized gangs such as the 5 Points began losing their footing in the rackets. The final transition to being the most powerful organization in the underworld occurred when the leader of the 5 Points gang, Paul Kelly, under threat of assassination from rival gangs, asked Giuseppe Morello for protection. The Clutch Hand, as Morello was now widely known, welcomed the old gangster to East 116th Street and rented him an apartment in a building owned by the family. Morello used Kelly and another powerful man in Little Italy named Gio Gallucci to make contact with local politicians and judges. Soon, a system of payoffs was implemented which shielded the rackets and insulated the leaders of the family. It seemed like the Morellos were to remain untouchable. However, the Italian squad had different ideas. Despite one of his top informants, Salvatore Speciale, being found dead of a gunshot wound, Petrosino and his squad had been working hard to develop other sources and through arrests of low-level gangsters had made a dent in the counterfeit currency trade. However, the kidnapping of Antonio Bazzuffi set everything on its head. Bazzuffi was a 14-year-old son of one of the wealthiest private bankers in Little Italy. This was a man Morello certainly knew as he helped to charter a front corporation for the Morello family years earlier. When Petrosino arrived at the family home, he immediately encountered resistance. "Officer Petrosino, with no disrespect, we wish to handle this situation within the family," the elder Bazzuffi said from the front door of his home. "You must know you cannot trust these men," Petrosino almost begged. "If somebody doesn't stand up to them, they will do this again to someone else. Do you want this on your conscience?" Petrosino finished, but it was too late. Before he could end his sentence, the door had already been closed in his face. The next day, Petrosino and his men picked up Giuseppe Morello outside his saloon on 8 Prince Street. "Look, Giuseppe, we know no one would dare kidnap the son of one of your associates. We know you have him. Tell us where the boy is. He's an innocent," Petrosino argued passionately. Morello just smiled quietly, and after a moment, he finally spoke. "I heard the boy ran off, maybe with a girl. You know how young love can be. Besides, a little bird spread a rumor that he just returned this very morning. And it was true. The boy had been released near his home just minutes after they picked Morello up." Petrosino eventually got the story. The boy was held captive for 3 days while a ransom of $20,000 was negotiated. After his release, young Antonio described being tied to a bed and tortured with stilettos by a group of masked Sicilians. Despite this horrific ordeal, the family refused to cooperate or even admit they paid a ransom. Their story was the boy ran off and now he was home. As was the case every single time prior, Petrosino was again forced to release Morello. While generally thought of as the brain of the operation, Giuseppe Morello was not the only mobster in the family to innovate new rackets. Lupo and one of his young soldiers named Antonio Sacala refined a scam into what was to be a huge moneymaker for the family. The idea was to lodge fraudulent insurance claims. Members of the gang would encourage frightened shopkeepers to purchase expensive fire insurance policies. Then, when the policy was in effect, Sacala would set the property ablaze and collect a substantial portion of the claim. Sacala explained the scam to Morello in detail one night over drinks. "So the Mark owns a store of some kind. You have it insured against fire. Then he pays the insurance on the property. Now, to realize on the money paid, you must burn. He does not wish to do it himself because it's too risky, so he sends for me. I plan and start a fire that will never be questioned. When the insurance company pays him, he pays me a percentage," Sacala continued. "I like to use glycerin, mixed with other matters. It does not smell at all and leaves no traces of its own burning. It takes 3 or 4 men. I direct them and they bring me the materials. I pay them $5 each night for the time they work." "Can they be trusted?" Morello asked intently. "They can be trusted to fear you," Sacala said, smiling. "That will be enough," Morello said with finality. With so much money coming in, Morello began setting up local monopolies as legitimate businesses. The coal racket, the ice delivery racket, the laundry racket, even foodstuffs, all brought in substantial sums. With all the majority wholesalers fixing prices and paying a percentage to the racketeers, incredible wealth was built. The chicken racket alone in West Washington Market was thought to be worth at least $100,000. Morello's half-brother Vincent Terranova ruled ice delivery through his company, Morello and Barbero. Youngest Terranova brother Ciro gradually became more powerful in the foodstuffs market, monopolizing the importation of certain vegetables, such as artichokes. Meanwhile, Lupo eliminated competition in the grocery business by any means necessary. His method wasn't very scientific, but it worked, and due to Lupo's hands-on approach, being a grocery store proprietor became a very dangerous business. It was also Lupo who came up with the idea of capitalizing on the booming construction market in a city struggling to accommodate 1 million new immigrants each year. A 6-story tenement block could be put up for about $25,000, and when completed, contained 24 small apartments, each of which could be rented at a rate of about $150 a year. Developers could thus recover their investment over a 7-year period while retaining a highly valuable asset in the tenement itself. Since not even the Morello family's illegal enterprises generated the sort of funds required to pay for the construction of entire tenement blocks, Lupo arranged to sell shares in a newly incorporated construction company and then obtain mortgages on suitable lots. The result was the formation of a company called the Ignaz Florio Cooperative Association among Corleonesi. Anyone who got in the way ended up in a barrel. It seemed as though the Morello family had its tentacles in every aspect of New York City. Petrosino and his Italian squad saw this slow buildup of corruption in the shadows and were sickened by it. Many times, Petrosino felt like this fight he started with the Morellos was tantamount to pissing in the wind. The leaders of the gang were now so well insulated that they were never anywhere near the commission of a crime. Well, with the exception of Lupo, who still enjoyed taking part in hits. However, Petrosino was not giving up. The bit was in his teeth. He would see Morello and Lupo in prison or die trying.